This is Autoline Daily, the show dedicated to enthusiasts of the global automotive industry. President Biden wants half of all new car sales to be electric by 2030, and to help make that happen, the administration will make $5 billion available to states to build a network of 500,000 EV chargers by the end of the decade. And the Department of Transportation just issued proposals for the minimum standards and requirements for projects to get funding. The rules will help ensure that the chargers are available to all Americans and that they're interoperable between different charging companies with similar payment systems, pricing information, charging speeds, and more. Earlier this year, the Federal Highway Administration proposed placing chargers 50 miles apart within 1 mile of interstate highways and have at least 450 kilowatts of power. And speaking of EV charging, the German supplier Siemens announced it's investing $25 million to acquire a minority stake in Witricity, a company that's developing wireless EV charging technology. The two companies will work together to promote the adoption of wireless charging for both passenger and commercial vehicles globally, as well as enable interoperability between vehicles and infrastructure. Siemens says the market for wireless charging will hit $2 billion by 2028 in Europe and North America. And if you'd like to learn more about Witricity, you can check out the interview we did with the company. Many drivers are under the impression that premium gasoline will improve horsepower, fuel economy, or emissions. But according to research done by the AAA, unless your car requires it, there isn't really any benefit to using premium fuel. AAA says 16.5 million Americans fill up their vehicles with premium fuel when regular fuel would work just as well. And with the price of gas soaring, AAA says drivers should consider using regular fuel to save money, but should also check their owner's manual to see what the manufacturer recommends. And here's an interesting fact. 88% of the gas sold in the U.S. is regular, 11% is premium, and the rest is mid-grade. Foreign automakers have dominated the Chinese market, but that's changing fast, especially when it comes to electric and plug-in cars. So far this year, new energy vehicles have accounted for 45% of sales of Chinese-branded vehicles, but only 4% of sales for joint venture vehicles. Foreign brands still dominate the luxury segment, but Chinese automakers are making great inroads with electric and plug-ins in the lower and middle grade segments of the market.
We want to know what drives your testing. OTA, connected car, diagnostics, remote testing. Intrepid Control Systems is here to help you work from anywhere. Intrepid Control Systems, driven by your data.
Later this summer, Cadillac is going to officially reveal what may be the most ambitious car it's ever made, the Celestiq. But for now, it's just teasing out a few images. The Celestiq will be the flagship sedan for the brand. It will be hand-built in very low volume at a facility near GM's Technical Center outside of Detroit. General Motors showed a fiberglass mock-up of the Celestiq to the media at its Battery Day in March of 2020. It features a clean, long design with a fastback rear end that tapers into something of a boat tail with a diffuser underneath. It also has a sail panel that's very similar to the Lyriq. That mock-up didn't have any door handles or side view mirrors to give it an even cleaner look. One image that shows the design detail that Cadillac is getting into is this door hinge. It looks like a precision-crafted component, not some cheap stamping. So how will Cadillac price the Celestiq? We're guessing it will be somewhere around $200,000. But let us know what you think it will cost. And speaking of potentially expensive vehicles, a South Korean newspaper reports that Genesis is going to create a new division called One of One that will make one-off and super limited edition vehicles. An announcement is expected sometime this month, and it should show off its first design at the same time. Volkswagen is expanding its all-wheel drive offerings for the ID.4 in Europe. It used to be that you could only get all-wheel drive on the GTX version of the ID.4, which features a few unique styling cues. But it will now be available on the ID.4 Pro model as well. The dual motor setup provides 195 kilowatts, or roughly 260 horsepower, and it has a 77 kilowatt-hour battery that provides 517 kilometers, or 321 miles of range on the WLTP test cycle. Pricing starts at just over 49,000 euro, or $52,600 in Germany, which is a little more than 1,400 euro cheaper than the GTX. Speaking of Volkswagen, it's part of a research project that wants to prove you can recycle EV batteries multiple times. The idea is to create a sustainable closed-loop material system that will continue to capture the most valuable components of a battery. That includes graphite, cathode metals, and the electrolyte. However, it doesn't say if there's a limit on the number of times these materials can be recycled or how long the project will last.
At Schaeffler, we pioneer motion. Electrifying mobility, manufacturing smarter, reducing CO2 emissions, making energy production clean. Schaeffler pioneers motion to advance how the world moves.
The future of Michigan is extraordinarily bright. We have such incredible assets, and I think more and more we're realizing how to put those together in a way that's going to help this state really help lead the nation as we go forward.
Automakers love to establish direct relationships with customers, but it used to be one of the only ways to do that was through their dealerships. Now technology is changing that. Volvo says it will use OTAs in its smartphone app to connect with customers and is close to a goal of 5 million users. So rather than interacting with its thousands of dealers worldwide to build relationships, it can connect with 5 million people. There will also be a push to move shoppers online. Volvo wants 50% of sales to be done online. Dealers may be enjoying record profits right now, but if I were a dealer, I'd be worried about all this talk of moving sales online and the splitting or separating of EV-only brands. As we keep pointing out, most of the innovation in the auto industry comes from suppliers, and we are intrigued by this development from Nexteer. It partnered with an Israeli company called Tactile Mobility to develop a system that can detect changing road surfaces, as well as any wear and tear on tires, shocks, brakes, and steering. Most interestingly, it does this without any additional sensors on the vehicle. Instead, Nexteer developed some simple algorithms and artificial intelligence for its electric power steering to measure micro slips at the tires. The software is so simple and it doesn't use up a lot of memory. Better still, the data it collects can be used by automakers to detect early problems with vehicles, and the data can be sold to insurance companies, municipalities, and motor vehicle departments. BMW started using it last year, but it still hasn't given Nexteer permission to identify which models use it. It seems to be available on models that are equipped with BMW's iDrive 7.0 system. A supplier company called Emergency Safety Solutions, or ESS, developed emergency flashers that flash at a far faster rate than the ones that are currently used. Today's flashers haven't changed since 1951. They flash at rates of 1 to 2 hertz because that's all that incandescent bulbs and controls could handle. But with LEDs, ESS can pulse the flashers at a far faster rate, which is far more noticeable to oncoming traffic. And it can beam out a warning to other cars that will show up on their navigation screen or the map on their phone. And good news for automakers, as long as your vehicles have LED lights, the system can be adopted with 0 hardware changes. That's a wrap for today. Thank you for tuning in.
Autoline Daily is brought to you by Bridgestone, solutions for your journey. Intrepid Control Systems, over-the-air engineering, boost your game. Scheffler, we pioneer motion. And by the Michigan Economic Development Corporation.